Welcome to the Criminologist Podcast. Our goal here is to educate and enlighten our listeners, focusing on the latest and greatest evidence-based interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. And not only those factors which drive folks into crime, we also look at the reasons why people exit a life of crime. Also, we attempt to paint an accurate picture of that journey from the perspective of the justice-involved individual. Too often, our perceptions of those involved in the system are tainted by media-driven caricatures created to sell newspapers or movie tickets. This adds little to a healthy dialogue as to how to best address criminality. This podcast will avoid stereotypes and biases. We will endeavor to accomplish the first two goals in a way that keep you, the listener, interested and even entertained. And now, the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello and welcome to episode 55 of The Criminologist Podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. Back this week to our fictitious caseload of clients, going to be joined by a fan favorite, the one and only Patrick Bateman. Decided to take the old time machine out for another spin in this episode. If you recall, back in episode 48, we had some fun in the time machine and we leapt into the future to visit a desisted Mia Wallace. Check that episode out if you've not already done so. One of the issues with those who study desistance theory is that by its nature, it involves a longitudinal view of the individuals being examined, if you will. Think Eleanor and Sheldon Glick, think Samson and Loeb. Well, as it turns out, I can play fast and loose with the past, present, and future here on the show. So, once again, we're going to get a glimpse into the future of one of our clients to see how desistance may look for that individual. I thought, though, we would begin by flashing back to what brought Patrick to our attention in the first place. Here, then, is his offense narrative from his pre-sentence investigation report. On the night of the offense, St. Joseph Police Department officers were sent to the Red Carpet nightclub on a call of an assault. Officers spoke with the bouncer and victim, identified in the criminal complaint by his initials, JFA. Officers noted at the time the victim's face was still bleeding. The victim stated he escorted a man outside because he was causing trouble. When the victim noticed that the man had a bottle of beer in his hand, he asked the man to give him the bottle. The man smashed the bottle in JFA's face. Officers noted a cut immediately below the victim's left eye and cuts to his head. Victim suffered a severed tear duct that will require surgery to repair. Witnesses reported seeing the defendant strike the victim with the bottle. The defendant was advised of his constitutional rights and agreed to speak with the police. He stated that he had been pushed to the ground for no reason and did not recall anything else. The defendant was intoxicated with a blood alcohol content of 0.151 per the intoxilizer. And as we know, Patrick Bateman pled guilty to the offense of assault in the second degree and was placed on probation supervision. So that was Patrick Bateman then. Now, an issue in the field of corrections, probation, parole is that too often the practitioners consistently continue to view their clients through that lens. The lens of their offense, that is. As a colleague once put it to me, imagine the worst thing you did on the worst day of your life. And now imagine being viewed and judged and treated through that definition of you for years to come. Most of us are sadly aware of the terms racism or sexism or even ageism, My feeling is that in the field of corrections, we suffer too often from what I call otherisms, or put another way, the phenomenon of otherization. I penned a column for Forensic Mental Health Practitioner a while back entitled, "What's in a Name?" And in that piece, I talked about this sort of us versus them dichotomy in corrections. I'm quoting Childers here. Categorizing people leads to depersonalization, and depersonalization leads to objectification. Ultimately, objects are more expendable than people. When we objectify justice-involved individuals by calling them names like convict, offender, thug, or even high-risk cases, we're able to marginalize them, to forget about their positive qualities, to desensitize ourselves to the trauma inflicted on their families and become comfortable with locking them away. But that's okay, because after all, they aren't like us and they get what they deserve. Or as my friend Sean Trustin puts it, otherization. Looking at clients based on their offense leads to otherization. They're not like us. They are the others. Through the desistance lens, though, we don't view folks from what they've done, but rather what or who they can become. And so with that, let's take a look into the future and get a glimpse of a desisted Patrick Bateman. What am I hungry for? What am I hungry for? You know, you've been coming to this place forever. You have the same dialogue with yourself every time when you get here, and every time you end up getting the same thing. Hang on, is that?
Hey, I thought that was you from afar. How in the hell are you?
I am fantastic. How are you, Patrick? You're looking great.
Well, sobriety has had many ancillary benefits for me, including dropping a few pounds. You don't look so bad after all these years.
I'm going to take that as the compliment that I'm certain it was intended to be, Patrick. So, what are you up to? You come here often?
I'd say so. I own this place.
What? Are you serious?
Serious as a heart attack, Jack. Yeah, I bought this place about 6 years ago. Been going gangbusters ever since. It is so true what they say about finding a job you love. Blah, blah, blah.
You find a job you love and you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah, I was in the ballpark. So what's new with you? Still working downtown?
No, I have been retired for a stretch now. Back up though, Patrick. You need to provide more details for me. Fill in the blanks between me requesting from the judge that you get off supervision early to being a business owner.
Yeah, well, actually, you planted the seeds for this long before I got off paper. I had plenty of POs before you, but I gotta tell you, what stuff we did in your office, and really just the way you trusted and believed in me, was way more effective than any formal interventions.
My fragile ego has not been sufficiently stroked in quite a while. Please elaborate, Patrick.
Can do. Well, the benefit of hindsight, I think I have a pretty good handle on your tactics.
Tactics sound so underhanded. I can assure you I only had your best interest in mind.
Oh, yeah, I know. What I mean was, looking back, I can see how at times you operated under the approaches of the day. But you also tried to dabble in some other stuff that was probably a bit, how shall we say, unconventional.
This is so intriguing for me, Patrick. Sort of like getting an Amazon review of a product, or in this case, a service. So now I gotta know more. Let's start with the approaches of the day, as you put it.
You know, the stuff that those assessments you always did with me told you to focus on. Stuff like getting me to go back to get my GED, and of course getting sober. Those are things that even a numbskull probation officer would know.
Well, you would be surprised, but yes, part of my approach was to tackle those risk factors which we know lead to higher rates of reoffending, or in your case even relapsing. And hey, look, all those assessments must have done the trick, since I'm assuming only a sober, well-educated Patrick Bateman could have risen to the position you hold now. Am I right?
Not gonna lie, that was a huge part of it for me. But if I am being honest here, there was more to it than just getting sober and getting my diploma. That is, those were a good start, for a good foundation. But it was more than just that. For example, to this day, I can remember the time you had me do the very first exercise, where you had me try to imagine myself in the future. What did you call that one again?
Imagining the future crime-free you. Of course.
Yeah, that was it. I remember at the time, I gave you shit about laminating it, but truth be told, I think I still have that old laminated card around my house somewhere.
I told you, man, laminated stuff and cockroaches, the only survivors of the zombie apocalypse.
But seriously, I remember you sat me down and asked me to try to imagine myself in the future. You had me vividly imagine a time in the future when I was crime-free. And I remember you telling me there was more to that than just not getting locked up for shit. You told me to imagine being a totally different person. A person with a dream job, have a circle of friends who are not only upstanding citizens, but ones who can be a good support network in reaching my hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I can remember going over that with you for the first time and asking you to even write a short story or a poem or even a song describing the future crime-free you.
And I know you remember the final piece of that assignment.
Most importantly, you no longer see yourself as you do today. You've taken on a whole new identity.
That's right, my new identity. And here I am today, proud owner and operator at this fine establishment.
Are you telling me you no longer see yourself as the high-risk probationer who was reporting to me after pleading guilty and being sentenced for the offense of assault in the second degree?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I would not recognize that guy if he walked in here to place an order. Hey, you remember the other slice of that homework?
Of course I do. The 3 steps to a crime-free self. Also laminated, I might add. Your turn. You remember what you filled in for those steps?
Oh, crap. So much for my ringing endorsement. Remind me the steps again?
Now you're putting me on the spot. I mentioned I am retired, did I not? Okay, let's see. Well, step 1 was easy. Imagine your future crime-free self.
You know, if I'm not mistaken, I think I began by simply imagining being sober and having a job that I loved.
And here you are, Patrick, sober and having a job you love. Let's see, what was that step 2 again? Oh yeah, list some steps you can take to make it happen.
Well, with that one, at the time, I recall focusing on the obvious ones, like getting my diploma and completing treatment, but I remember I also was really determined about getting a new circle of friends. Friends in low places, Garth Brooks, all that stuff.
Yeah, a real shame what happened to him. I don't think they ever determined the cause of the crash, did they? But hey, we'll always have that anthem of his, am I right?
Yeah, and no, I don't think they ever did get to the bottom of that accident. Something with drone interference, maybe? You just knew that if they did not get a handle on regulating hovercraft, that sooner or later it would lead to a calamity of some kind. Flying cars and delivery drones need to stay in their own lanes, as I always say. But that song resonated with me at least. And I remember you telling me that social capital is not just about getting friends without criminal records, that it was more than just that. It was about getting folks in your life who can provide off-ramps out of crime. Folks who can provide you opportunities, which is exactly what I did.
And finally, step 3, list some strengths that can help you stay on track. How was your total recall with that one, Arnold?
Oh, yeah. Boy, it's like we just did this last month. I know I talked about my family being a good support system. Do you remember what else?
As I recall, you talked about your excellent work history and the fact that you are a highly motivated individual, Patrick. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
And not to ruin this reunion with a load of sentimentality, but as I said, the fact that you trusted and believed in me was more important and more powerful than any formal classroom or treatment bullshit. I really mean that.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. They do say that what is referred to as the Pygmalion effect is the real deal.
The what effect? Sounds like something we have here on the menu.
The Pygmalion effect. It's a psychological phenomenon wherein high expectations lead to improved outcomes. So, for example, if a school teacher has a certain group of kids who, for various reasons, they feel simply are smarter than other kids, say kids from the other side of the tracks, as they say, then those higher expectations will actually translate into higher achievement from those select students. Me believing in you, as you say, led to improved outcomes.
I would hate to think about the probation officers who don't believe in their clients. So then the theory would hold that they get worse outcomes?
Sadly, yes. Fortunately for you, though, Patrick, I did not fall into that camp. And now you stand before me here and now as a desisted individual. Well, even though this chance encounter is an example of what we refer to as an anecdotal example, I can tell you that on a personal level, this beats any empirical data by a long shot.
Pygmalion, anecdotal, empirical. Yeah, none of that on the menu here, I'm afraid. Hey, Angela, I find this table for this gentleman. Unless you want this order to go, I could have one of our drones get this to wherever you're going, lickety-split.
No thanks. We don't need another Garth Brooks incident. Imagine you are at a correctional and or criminology and or implementation science conference and you score a seat at the head table reserved for all the keynote speakers. How awesome would it be to listen in on the conversations of folks like Shad Bernuna, Fergus McNeil, Sarah Lewis, Jane Mulcahy, Glenn Tapia, Guy Bergone, Cam Stevens, James Bonta, and so many more. Well, no need to dream about that anymore. I brought all of those thought leaders together for you on my own YouTube channel, The Criminologist. In addition to my original content, I've created individual playlists featuring videos of all these folks and more. Subscribe to The Criminologist channel now and reserve your seat at the head table. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Hopefully the value added of this episode was to encourage practitioners to perhaps not look so much in the past when defining the individuals they supervise, but try to look a little bit more in the future for who that individual could become. Big thanks to my dear friend John Martz, the man of 1,000 voices, for once again voicing the character of Patrick Bateman. We will be back next week with a fresh episode. Looks like we are going to be going back to the UK for this episode. Love making those transatlantic connections. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, the Paragon Group, LLC.com, for training or presentations as to evidence-based practices and or implementation, or of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions, feel free to contact the show via our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook page and or our Instagram page at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. I encourage you to follow the Criminologist Media Group on Twitter. Our handle is Crim Media Group. Crim Media Group, the Criminologist Media Group, now on Twitter. There you will find the latest updates and related content for both this podcast and our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. You may also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Lastly, if you've not already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional content as to what you hear on this podcast. Merchandise is available. Reach out if you're interested. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, please spread the word. Tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to the show. And of course, do so if you've not already done so yourself. And remember, folks, there's no them. There's only us.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, training opportunities, or to contact the host, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. Click on the Contact Us tab in the upper right-hand side of the page. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.
The thoughts, statements, and opinions of the host and cast members do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers and are those of the host and cast themselves. Any discussion regarding client statements, behaviors, actions, or crimes are purely fictional and are used only for the purposes of example. Any examples that could be deemed to be related to an actual individual or individuals are incidental.